So Monday begins the whole April Fool's month. There's going to be so many jokes played on people. I mean, it's going to be unbelievable. The mainstream media, YouTube, I don't know. I mean, it's like next chapter, please. Can we move on to the next book? The next chapter. Just waiting. Not much see, it's more exciting when, you know, when you guys have some better stories to tell, like on the TV. When you have these people reading their scripts and telling stories about events that completely dominate the news, that's what I enjoy. But when it's like this, you know, I mean, what's there really to talk about? Just waiting for the next event, you know, right around the 5th of April. There might be a good one on Monday, but I think the 5th, I think coming next week, the end of next week, we should get a really, really good story. So I never really read much about Christ. I was more focused on the book of Daniel, Revelation, and like Peter, and just constantly rereading it, and then I started to read just recently about John the Baptist and Christ, and then that did pique my interest. Well, I kind of always thought and wondered, how did Christ know? Like, how do you know when you're... Because obviously his parents knew. But I don't think they... Like, let's say you know, your son is the Christ, right? And you know it from God. How do you tell him? Or you don't. You let him figure it out, right? So I'm sure he was a polite young man, right, his entire life. And so he was basically a stepchild, pretty much. Like, he didn't have a I mean, even though that was his father, but it wasn't I mean, I guess you can say it was blood, but it wasn't biological. It wasn't his biological father. So he was a stepchild, and I feel like it was a 7-year process. It could have been 8 full years, or 7 full years, or 8. But I feel like it was he definitely read the scriptures. At one time, and this is why I do this. At one time I said, I don't even think Christ read the scriptures. He just knew. Because God gave him that information. And then, now that I'm reading more, no, that's not the case at all. He knew the scriptures. That's how he knew that he was the one fulfilling the scriptures. And it wasn't just him knowing it that confirmed it. It was John the Baptist knew, I think, before he did. I think that's how it worked, because John knew the scriptures also, And God sent John, a man of God. However it was back in the day, the setting. But John the Baptist is the one that found out who Christ is. And by his words, he confirmed that with Christ. And then, because Christ was preaching with the spirit of Elijah, Christ was slaying the crap out of those people. He was slaying those 450 false prophets, and they were all cutting themselves the same way as Elijah, coming in the power of Elijah. That's why they said, well, Moses comes first. It's the same way it was. Moses came first to lay down the law. Elijah came after that to slay all the false prophets. And then John the Baptist came in between, during Christ being Elijah, because it's like the Spirit continued on. The Spirit continued on in another vessel. So when Christ was walking the earth, he had the Spirit. Well, I just go by what Steve says, because what Steve says who he is not who he is, but that's who Christ is. So when he says that he's the first Adam, the last Adam, and Elijah and Moses, I believe he said that, and John the Baptist and Christ, well, and David, because David represented Christ, then I see, okay, well, I don't agree with one of those, that Christ was John the Baptist. No. Number one, they were both living at the same time. So how can one spirit be in? Well, yeah, it can be in two people, but what I'm saying is, the reason I don't believe it that way is because when Christ is talking and saying, and they're asking him, shouldn't Elijah come first before the Messiah? And he's telling you that, yeah, he does come first. Before he's announced the Messiah, he's announced as Elijah. But when he's talking about John the Baptist, when he says he, and then if you're willing to accept this, then he is who, you say he is. In other words, it's the way he words it. And on top of that, John knew that he wasn't Elijah. He wasn't trying to take claim for that. He was just telling them he's there to bear witness to the light. He is that witness that makes confirmation that Christ is on earth walking, that the Messiah is there. And so with John confirming that Christ is, and then because it's like he was telling people, he's like, yo, look what this guy's doing. He's telling people what they're doing, and he's healing the sick and the blind and everything. And there people are turning to God because of him. He's bearing witness, and then that helped Christ understand who he was, because at a certain point, when Christ was when he was by Jacob's well with that woman, and he said, if you, in other words, if you knew that basically you're talking to the Son of God, and if you knew that, you would have asked for the living water instead of spiritual water. So with him, he already knew at that point, because he said Elijah has already come, which means to me, he was already preaching in the spirit of Elijah, and then, which means he knew he was the Messiah. But see, at the same time, Christ was cut off. He was cut off. Because Christ comes with fire and then water. The fire is where he devours his enemies with fire. He puts them out with the water. You know, if you light a fire, how do you put it out? You put it out with water. So I feel like Christ didn't fully get a chance yet to put everybody out with the water, because he comes slaying people with fire, devouring them. And then it's time to show them, you know, because the fire is the tough love. That's what that is. The water is the kind, gentle love that he didn't get a chance to show the entire world yet. So that's why I feel like, yeah, he was cut off halfway through. And so these days, it's going to continue on. It's going to continue on. The Spirit of Christ is going to, has already been slaying their enemies with the fire that proceeds out of their mouths. And coming up, it's time for the gospel to be preached without having to show everybody tough love. They already know the tough love. They already know the tough love, so this time around, they get to experience what it's like to just be taught the word about God. So I do feel like Christ knew by reading the scriptures, and just like, it's like, how do you know where you fit in these days in the Bible unless you're reading it? Like, you have to have an understanding of it. And once you understand where you're at, once you know who you're not, then you know who you are. When you know that you're not somebody, then you know you are somebody. When you know you're not this spirit, then you know that you are that spirit. So I think it kind of answered my questions when I started looking into it more. Because you wonder, okay, his parents were told when he was, well, before he was born, they knew. But I mean, they might have hinted around to him a little bit. But I don't think anybody actually told him. Nobody actually told him. It just progressed where he started to see, like, the world equivalent to today's world, walking around, just listening to the filthy conversations, seeing all the disgusting things that people are doing. And Christ, with him having the heart that he does, he spoke up. And then by knowing the scriptures, he kind of started to see where he was fitting in. And then and with the help of John was bearing witness that he was the light. And then Christ in return was bearing witness that John is the one that's supposed to be crying in the wilderness, saying, make the path straight for the way of the Lord, because he's on his way and he's here. So it's like one hand washes the other. And that's how, because if you don't know each other, and all of a sudden you start to know each other, that's how everything gets confirmed. And then Christ and John did meet. So they did meet each other. I still don't know. who wrote the book of Revelation? Was that John the Baptist, or was there a different John? And then with the book 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, was that John the Baptist that wrote that, or was there a different John? I don't know. Maybe I'll look that up. But there's always the Sadducees and the Pharisees that have a lot of knowledge of scriptures, and but they tend not to understand it spiritually. But these days, okay, I have a feeling that there's a bunch of Pharisees and Sadducees that understand that, you know, they understand the entire Bible, but there's also, it's like God threw into some of their hearts to understand spiritual meanings, and that's how they can understand what's going on in the world. And it's like everybody's looking. See, I said this before, I don't believe there's one person that plays the role of any individual in the Bible. Like, there's not one Christ, there's not one John the Baptist, there's not one Satan, there's not one Lucifer, there's not one this and one that. And then here comes this year, 2019, and then here comes more knowledge, and then because I'm seeing how people are playing this out. Like, there's these plants on YouTube that are playing out the roles. I mean, it's like Jonathan Kleck helped me understand it. Oh, okay, yeah, there are agents out there that are playing this role out. And then with the names in gematria and his name and Derek Rose's name, same calculations, and it's like they just come up with these names that connects with the same numbers. I don't know. And then with the things he's talking about, how the unrolled scrolls and everything, and you know, it's like this. Okay, this is the one thing that I ask. If you're basically the Messiah, because that's kind of where I'm getting at. And at first I thought he was just, you know, a regular person like myself, but you know, it's whatever. So the point is, taking the credit for that, saying you have the unrolled scrolls and God is giving you the information and Michael's helping you, and just, I'm starting to put the pieces together, like, oh, right, okay. So in other words, yeah. So he's giving you the unrolled scrolls, right? You still believe that scorpions or locusts, literal locusts, are going to come up from a literal bottomless pit. Okay, that's not, you believe politics is, you know, Trump is a real president. Again, when the people say this stuff, and then you know an event is taking place, but you don't know when, right? You're unlocking the symbolism. You know, the call for an uprising does the same damn thing. You're unlocking all the symbols and turning things upside down, and you just, all right, can you tell the elite what they're doing? Yeah, you can tell them what they're doing. You can show them their signs. Their signs, what they're doing. But do you know that they're that the war is all fake? Do you know that? Or do you know that and you're acting like you don't know it? So these are a lot of these things I ask myself. If people are taking that claim, they should know other things than just, well, I don't know, I mean, we're almost there. I'm not really too certain, because there's a lot of things that I still don't know either. Okay. There's a lot of things that I'm still wondering myself. And but by seeing the plants on YouTube playing out specific roles in the Bible, it's starting to make me think that there literally is, and there literally is individuals walking the earth that are part of that 144,000. That not only is that true, but the elite are seeing it with their own eyes, because they are stalking people the same way that they were stalked back then. They have more of a, you just have way more information these days than you did back then. When Christ was walking the earth back then, you know, you had John proclaiming it and people believing, and even the elite pretty much knew, but they decided to kill him, even though they kind of didn't want to at first. But then, you know, it was Satan's plan for it. He was adamant about it, and he did. He used Judas to do it. This time around, Satan already knows. He knows better not to do it. But this time around, they're looking, and you know, the Messiah was already announced, the Golden Heights, talking about Steve in a decoded way. I don't believe in the coded Messiah, and they have a temple ready to place him in there, and I don't think he wants to sit in that temple. But hey, look, so be it. But these days now, they have way more. The elite have way more of a better chance of believing it this time around and not killing him because of all the surveillance that they know. So I just find it interesting. I think that Christ was cut off after 3.5 years, because he came preaching like Elijah with fire, and in the end he's going to come back preaching with the gospel, the water, to put the fire out.